Terma isn't alone. I'm not talking about Index, Ophinus, or the dragons. There is in fact another mysterious presence within Terma himself, which is known as Kamijo no Terma, as opposed to Kamijo yes Terma. But what on earth is this strange entity that stole Terma's identity as a villainous doppelganger version of himself? K&T describes himself as an ability of Terma's located within the boy's body, and has seemingly been a conscious entity within him for years, who remembers everything before Terma's memory loss from both Index and Shokuho Misaki 1 year prior to the story, as he doesn't reside in Terma's brain, but his right arm instead. Meaning K&T is completely unaffected whenever Terma happens to get his brain fried. The question is, when did K&T manifest within Terma, or where did he even come from? We don't know. Add that to the list. Also, what the hell's with this guy's name? Kamijo no Terma? Is that the best name the author could pull out of his ass? Well, it makes way more sense if you're a huge weeb who understands how to read Japanese, when you look at the kanji behind Terma's name, since it can be read in two different ways. The original Terma we all know and love's name has these characters in Japanese, while K&T's name is different, despite both reading as Kamijo Terma. K&T's name means the one who purifies God and slays demons, which is in fact referenced throughout the series. Komachi was even asked in a 2009 interview if there was any significance behind this reference. He said, "There is a meaning behind the one who purifies God and slays demons, the kanji of Kamijo no Terma, but any details about that are still a secret. Haha." 10 years later, New Testament 22R released, and seemingly, K&T was what he was referring to. K&T made his first physical appearance when he popped out of Terma's arm. Imagine Breaker was pushed to its limit, as something within his arm was at its breaking point. This was after Imagine Breaker had failed to fully nullify Kuronzod's magic flaming sword, and Terma's arm was severed via Alistair's instructions so that Terma could be healed. Terma was then fine, but was still missing an arm, which was being cared for by Shokuho Misaki, and God knows what she was using it for in her spare time. I'll leave that to your imagination. Strange fish eggs started to emerge from Terma's shoulder, where his arm should have been, but they were prevented from bursting thanks to Misaki's mental out Esper power, making Terma psychologically think his arm was still attached. Later, Terma regained the arm, but it was severed again by a second flaming sword spell. Evidently, the seal within his arm had reached its breaking point, likely due to the many times Terma's arm had been cut off, resulting in the fish eggs returning with a bang. Shortly after, a strange transparent prism appeared from his right shoulder. Terma himself noticed it looked very similar to the same one which acted as the core of Kazakiri Hyoka, whose true form is Fused Kazakiri, an artificial angel made of AIM energy, the energy that all Espers passively emit from their bodies. But this prism was different, as K&T took physical form by copying Terma's own appearance and clothing. And he also now had Imagine Breaker in his right hand instead of Terma, with the subtle difference between the two boys being that K&T had a faint pink or green light coming from the corner of his mouth and also the outline of his body. And K&T began to wear a tuxedo at a party in Windsor Castle. Terma did get a new right arm with an unusual colour, which allowed him to access the dragon shell form, turning him into an actual dragon with enhanced speed and strength. K&T also had access to the dragon shell, but this one was pink and green as opposed to Terma's blue and yellow version. These contrasting colours are possibly a reference to the Book of the Law, a key text in the religion of Thelema, which heavily influenced a certain magical index, and in the series itself, it's a magical grimoire. Chapter 2 verse 50 reads, "Blue am I, and gold in the light of my bride, but a red gleam is in my eyes, and my spangles are purple and green," describing the Flemic god known as Hadit. The blue and gold possibly refers to OG Terma's colour scheme, and the purple and green for K&T, while the red gleam in the eyes is notable as Terma gets a severe case of pink eye when using the Dragon Strike. Also, apparently, if you discuss the contents of the Book of the Law, you'll be cursed for eternity. Too bad, I already am. K&T ended up pretending to be the real Terma, convincing everyone at Windsor Castle that he truly was the boy who helped defeat Choronzon. KNT truly believed he was Kamijo Toma, since having Imagine Breaker and all of Toma's lost memories made him the real deal. Or so he believed, as opposed to the real Toma, who had suffered amnesia and therefore had lost his original identity, forcing him to create a new one. Once the real Toma arrived, it became apparent that KNT truly was the imposter after all, as his behaviour simply wasn't very Toma-like. KNT was acting based on how he viewed Toma's actions by observing them from within his body, with a cynical perspective of Toma's heroic actions of saving those around him. KNT's philosophy was entirely about manipulating those around him for his own benefit, as he saw that Toma would gain lots of powerful allies from helping those in need. KNT saw the actual reason for this was for Toma's own self-interest, by expanding his influence and control in order to benefit from those in his sphere of influence. He was also adamant to eliminate the OG Toma, who he viewed as a sole threat to his existence, as there can only be one true Kamijo Toma. KNT successfully manipulated a few of Toma's allies, such as Misaki and Queen Elizard of the United Kingdom. He gaslighted Misaki into betraying Misaka, Toma and the others, as KNT could actually remember her, while the OG Toma was incapable of doing so. While Misaki was aware that KNT was a faker, she couldn't help but cling on to the miracle she always wanted, that the boy she loved would remember her. Therefore, she made the decision to selfishly pursue her dream, while jeopardizing the others. After taking over Windsor Castle using Misaki's mental outs, KNT then made Elizard side with him, after threatening he would destroy valuable spiritual items of the UK, and he would add her daughters to his harem, which definitely struck a nerve with the Queen. KNT, however, was later defeated by the real Toma, stabbing the dragon form KNT with a knife, allowing the doppelganger to be absorbed back into his body. Just like how Toma's Talk no Jutsu can act as a way to impose his own beliefs upon others, it's normally used as a way to break the illusions of his opponents, since they are usually acting under a misguided set of beliefs that could bring harm to others. KNT uses his Talk no Jutsu in a malicious way that attempts to bring out the worst aspects of people, as opposed to OG Toma attempting to bring out their inner good. In this sense, KNT acts very much like the devil from the Bible, in the way he tries to tempt Misaki with her greatest desire. Even though she is aware it is morally wrong for her to side with him, this contrasts well to OG Toma, who draws more parallels to a Christ-like figure. Toma is also willing to kill KNT, despite him usually having a no-kill rule, justifying it likely due to the fact that KNT is part of him, whether he likes it or not, and is willing to bring an end to part of himself in order to establish what Kamijo Toma truly represents, and to fully embrace his current identity. This is instead of relying on Imagine Breaker or his lost memories to define who he is. By killing KNT, Toma accepts his past self no longer matters, as he knows who he is without his memories, further symbolized by the fact Toma destroys the Feathers of Light shortly after his victory against KNT, the same feathers which killed his past self and gave birth to who he is now. I think KNT represents how Toma can be seen as this morally righteous person who could be perceived as selfish in his actions to save others, despite it being selfless on the surface with how he prioritizes others over himself. In a series where Toma mostly judges the actions of others and acts accordingly, KNT is the one who judges Toma's actions and sees it from a darker point of view. But by showing Toma how his actions and past can be twisted to suit KNT's narrative, Toma managed to accept who he truly was inside by discarding KNT and embracing his current self. Interestingly, Anna Sprengel predicted that KNT would be the victor between the two Tomas, believing that the one who had the knowledge over the past would triumph over the other one who created a new self. But Anna acknowledged that KNT wasn't truly Toma, stating that, at this point, that is a different being, acting entirely independently, both in mind and body. And yet, that means little to Anna. She then used an anecdote of a pupa stage in Honeybee Larva to explain the conflict with Toma and KNT. That does more than just let the bug grow from larva to adult. Inside the hard pupa, the larva destroys its own muscles and organs and uses that to create its adult form. You could say they are remaking their old self into a new self, the acquisition of a new self. This could be used as an analogy to suggest how Terma's old self was destroyed and became new in the Index arc. Or it refers to the ongoing conflict between Terma and KNT, as whoever destroys the old self would then act as a replacement. So we all know KNT first made an appearance at the very end of New Testament, the sequel series to the original A Certain Magical Index novels. Or did he? Due to KNT being an active conscious entity within Terma, it is more than likely we have seen his influence over Terma's body much earlier in the story. Like when Terma's arm was severed in the Deep Blood arc, where he notably acts very unusual, basically pretending to be a psycho in order to make Aureolus Izzard scared shitless so that his magic could no longer work. Terma said afterwards it was just as planned. But how did he pull off such an Oscar-worthy performance after losing his entire arm? Terma pretty much manipulated Izzard to feel afraid, and was more sinister with his words than the boy we all know and love, making the similarities between this act and KNT pretty clear. Perhaps it was KNT directly influencing this behaviour, even if it was Terma's plan and his decision making still going ahead. KNT simply helped execute it seamlessly, while also enhancing the negative attributes of Terma's personality. And there is even more evidence for this in Genesis Testament, which I'll get onto soon. Then there was another time Terma lost his arm, in this instance versus Fiamma of the Right in World War III. And what is known as the Invisible Thing emerged, which is a mysterious presence that could nullify Fiamma's attack at its strongest. Terma then directly communicated with the Invisible Thing, or a different conscious entity within Terma that has the capacity to think and speak. We don't know what this voice within Terma said, but Terma strongly stated he did not need its help, whatever it was, and chose to fight Fiamma using his own strength. And there is now a strong case to suggest that this voice was indeed KNT speaking to Terma, to convince him to use the powers beyond the right hand, with Terma likely reluctant as he feared he might have killed Fiamma, which is against Terma's ideals. Then fast forward to Genesis Testament Volume 9, where Terma has no other choice but to force out the Dragon Strike, as Christian Rosenkreutz could not be stopped by any other method, with him wanting to murder the unconscious Anna Sprengel in the District 7 hospital, which was full of patients and bystanders. He requested Misaka to fire her railgun at a specific part of the hospital, with her not knowing that by doing so would allow Terma's arm to fly off his body. Then something within Terma revealed itself. Kamijo heard a voice from somewhere. It came from inside his own head. Another boy spoke clearly. I was just about fed up with him myself. No more holding back. If you didn't do it, I was about to come out on my own. I only needed that right hand gone. Now, this other boy is a clear nod to being KNT, considering how he got reabsorbed back into Terma's body. I mean, who else is it really going to be? You want Komachi to spell the shit out to you, like index readers are dumb? Therefore, I think this also harkens back to the moment in World War III, with the voice being the exact same boy. Unless it was the Ice Cream Man from Railgun S talking to him, I don't know. Once the dragon was unleashed versus CRC, Terma pretty much lost his good nature, as his personality shifted to a more twisted one, with him actually turning murderous and wanting to kill CRC, which goes against everything Terma usually stands for. And this time CRC is clearly not part of Terma, so you can't use that excuse again. Terma may have had an intuition that this may have happened if he accepted the voice inside his head during World War III, which makes a whole lot more sense as to why he rejected the power, as he didn't want to become a bloodthirsty monster, since the Invisible Thing was likely also present in the Deep Blood arc, since Izzard's magic was repelled despite having no Imagine Breaker present. I know the anime technically isn't canon next to the novels, but we do hear the Imagine Breaker sound effect when this happens, suggesting it wasn't Izzard's own incompetence with this particular attack. Therefore, could it be that the Invisible Thing is in fact a premature version of KNT, or the fish eggs. I mean, Iroh's mentioned it had grown since World War III when he grabbed it in New Testament Volume 18, and then Toma's arm coincidentally reached its limits at the end of NT, hinting that there was definitely something inside continuing to grow until it reached its limit. So I think there's a good chance both the Invisible Thing and KNT are related. That also possibly includes the Dragon King too, considering we heard KNT's voice alongside it in Genesis Testament 9, and the fact we had the whole Dragon Shell transformation shenanigans in New Testament 22R. I don't believe KNT is the Dragon King per se. I think him being more connected to the Invisible Thing is more likely. Nevertheless, while a lot of Index fans have been under the impression that all the shit in Terma's arm are different things, there has to be some kind of connection between them, and I think the evidence suggests that too. Although, with how ridiculous Terma's arm is, it doesn't surprise me that it looks like this makes zero sense, and things just keep getting added to his arm, which causes more confusion and batshit theories. Since KNT described himself as an ability, and Toma was described as the Fool on the Tarot, which has the number 0, and that KNT emerged from a prism akin to Kazakiri, there is a theory that he might actually be Toma's hidden Esper power. I discussed the theory of Toma being the number 0 level 5 in this video if you're interested. We don't know for certain if Imagine Breaker has prevented Toma from using an Esper power, if he does truly have one to begin with that is, since the reason why he was ranked as a level 0 was simply to stop him from getting unwanted attention from the crazy scientists, and since Imagine Breaker isn't an Esper power, it didn't register as one on the system's scan. Therefore, since KNT appears when Imagine Breaker is gone and is described as an ability, could it possibly mean that KNT is maybe a representation of Toma's personal reality given material form? I'm honestly unsure what to make of this theory, as I could honestly see KNT as an AIM related being, maybe linked to the Secret Chiefs or the Imaginary Number School District, as opposed to being an Esper power. This is simply due to KNT's obvious links to Toma's other inner powers, like the dragons and the Invisible Thing, and I think there's a low chance either of those are Esper powers. If they are, then they likely fall under the gemstone category of powers, due to the links to the magic side and how unscientific they seem, just like Sogita's power and Himigami's deep blood. But if Toma is a gemstone, then I guess that ruins Sogita's title as the strongest gemstone then, and I'm not sure how I would feel about that. Let me know what you think about the theories revolving around KNT, and what do you make of his character. Make sure you check out these other awesome videos about Kamijo Toma on screen right now for even more content. Thanks for watching.